your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I am Richard Dugan, your host. Reverend Dr. D, I sometimes go by, and I am a reverend. I am not a doctor. It's honorary. It was bestowed on me by some other folks here in the Santa Barbara area when I moved here. But nonetheless, we are here to bring you new paradigms for a new world, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices. And one of those choices is with our very special guest today. And I'm very excited to have her with us for 2 reasons. Number one, because she is the author of The Courage to Shine. Find your voice and discover the healing power of your words. And it was, of course, published a few years back in 2021. And her name is Eileen Forrestal. And the second reason why I'm so happy to have her on the program is because in spite of the fact that I would trade places with her logistically in a minute, she's coming to us all the way from, you guessed it, Ireland. Eileen, thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for having me.
You have a book that really speaks to one of the phrases, if you will, that I use on a regular basis, one of the statements. Words have power. And when you're talking about finding one's voice, and especially the aspect of the healing power of our words, in my book, Choices, I talk about people matching their words to their choice. You've heard the phrase, of course, the glass half full, half empty, those types of things, or even let's say someone is, you've prepared a meal for some folks, and around the table, people, oh man, that was absolutely, it was delicious. It was great, fantastic. Other people say, oh, that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. And it's like, what? What do you mean it wasn't bad? Well, was it good? And to me, that says an awful lot about maybe their glass, they perceive it as half empty instead of half full. How'd you come up with this area of, shall we say, expertise in terms of the courage to shine? Why is that important?
Well, it's more in the realm of the voice. Find your voice, discover the healing power of your words, because a lot of my story is around the fact that I did not have much of a voice when I was young. I had a stammer, so I didn't really want to talk at all. And I found sometimes it was easier to say easy words rather than true words, so you'd end up kind of lying because it was easier. The words would come out easier. I would often say, I would get off the bus at a place where I could say I can get off the bus because I couldn't say where I really wanted to get off the bus. Or if I went into a shop, if I really wanted, a packet of crisps, I couldn't say a packet of crisps. I'd have to say an apple, or I'd have to point, and people would think I was rude or I was stupid or whatever. So you always had this sense that what I was saying was really not what I wanted to say or what was like true for me to say. So I just had that found that the voice that I had was not really me, and I was hiding my voice all the time. But because I was hiding my voice, I was like hiding myself because who are you if you're not who you say you are? Or I was saying something, that maybe wasn't really true for me. So that was kind of a struggle that I had really for most of my life. And
Mm.
when I kind of eventually really kind of took that on and really decided, Jesus, life's got to be more than this ducking and diving and trying to hide. And so I just took that on, and that just took the courage. And the courage was just really to just say, do you know what? And, I'm nearly afraid to open my mouth because God knows what's going to come out.
Yeah.
But really, when I had the kind of courage, I suppose, to even say that, I was actually quite surprised to hear that what came out was kind of relatively normal. And then I'd realized I'd been kind of, I don't know, really, really struggling and suffering for like way too many years. So that was kind of my thing.
Hmm. Well, I
And
tell you, it's fascinating because there are many of us. I mean, when you use the example of being in the store and wanting to get some, as you call them, crisps, we call them potato chips or crackers. Uh,
it
I can
begins with a
only,
P.
there you go. Um, I would venture that might have even been instances where you, instead of asking someone for the apple, you spent a lot of time in the store searching. You spent a lot of time in the store trying to find it yourself so that you didn't have to ask someone. Is that a fair assessment too? That took a lot of your time, and there was an element of shyness in your demeanor, right?
It wasn't shy, it was completely
No?
disappeared.
Ah,
It was like, don't look at me at all,
yeah.
So I would like hide behind people, see what they were doing, try and do what they did, got what they got, sneak in really quickly. So there was
Mm,
a whole load of different kind of strategies that you had to do to try and, hide this defect. And
yeah.
speaking is like pretty important in life. So anyway, that was really a lot of my, as I said, my way of doing it. And then I was quite studious, so I was always reading a lot, and then I would also be watching. I was quiet, so you'd watch people, and you'd see how did the words come out of their mouths so easily, and read the books, and I could read fluently. How come I could? So there was all this kind of like, it's not fair, and this is not fair, and why is it like this? And it was just such a kind of just that whole world of it. And then because I was smart and I could read lots of books, I decided, well, let's go to college when I'm that. So I ended up like in the longest course in college because I think, well, if I don't have to talk for 7 years, I can come out at the end and it'll be fine. So I got into medicine, and then I qualified as an anesthetist, and then I spent like 20 years putting people to sleep and, keeping everybody's nice and quiet, on the anesthetic in the theater. So,
Mm,
nobody's talking. And so, yeah, you can kind of find that you're trying to follow other people and seeing what other people do and how do they manage it. And then, so, well, if I do that, then I'll
yeah.
kind of escape whatever I have to, you know, be, afraid of being found out,
Yeah.
basically.
I can kind of
So when you come,
relate.
it's much easier. Just come clean. So, courage to shine is nearly to courage to tell the truth and say, you know what, this is the way it is.
Yeah. I
Help.
find that interesting. I wish politicians would learn that lesson. When somebody gets caught with, I'll use this term, their hand caught in the cookie jar.
Mm.
And of course, the media descends. And I've noticed this over the years when a politician specifically says, yeah, my hand was in the cookie jar. I'm very sorry. I've shamed my family, my wife, da da da. It goes away. It disappears because there's nothing for the media to cover because the person has accepted responsibility for their actions. But boy, it takes on a life of its own when they say, no, I didn't do it. Now, that's not to say that every politician who said, I didn't do it, did stick their hand in the cookie jar. But obviously, there must have been something there to question their veracity, their character, and so forth. But I can relate with you because as a kid growing up, I was legally blind. And the last thing I wanted to do was draw attention to myself, whether it was looking for something in the store or reading in front of the class or even doing homework. And my penmanship, I should have become a legitimate medical doctor. I've got the penmanship for it, or at least I did when I was a kid. But dealing with in your medical field, in your career, as you say, putting people to sleep, as it were. But now you have found a way to wake them up in this process. Talk to us about, first of all, as I said earlier, the power of words. The word that words have power. How important is it, number one, for us to expand our vocabulary? Why that facilitates this process of having one's voice, being empowered with one's voice. It seems to me that the more choices you have in terms of words to choose from, the more, hopefully, the clearer, the more understood you can be, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we do have a big vocabulary, but the more words we use, sometimes it gets more confusing. So sometimes if we can simplify things and say things a little bit clearer and a bit straighter, it's actually easier. And because, you talk about politicians, and I mean, they are well used to spinning stuff, and
Hmm.
a lot can come out that can confuse, So sometimes, even though we have a lot to choose from, being a little bit more specific and a little bit, choosing, kind of correct words or accurate words rather than a variety of words. So yes, I understand that, to have the concept of a variety and then choose the one that most accurately reflects what it is you're trying to say as sort of simply as possible. But it's not easy. We get very caught up in language and just the way different people use words, the way different people, interpret words, all the different meanings people ascribe to words. So to be clear that what I'm saying to you and what you're hearing from me, that I'm saying what I intend to say and you're hearing what you hope I'm saying or what
Hmm.
you think I'm saying. My dad used to say, could you please listen to this in the spirit in which it's intended? And you go, okay. So the intention was, to, help me or to encourage me or to whatever, but I'd listen to it some other way, or you're just picking on me.
Yeah.
So I think there is that, how we use language, how we speak it, and how we listen to it. But words definitely have a huge amount of weight, and they matter, and what you say matters, and have it matter what you say. Some people say, oh, talk is cheap, and other people say, well, we cheapen talk. So if we
Mm.
don't cheapen it, and if you have your hand in the cookie jar, well, I'm sorry, my hand was in the cookie jar, and what it does is, okay, you might be absolved because you've come clean. But if you're a politician or you represent some aspect of the community, that then diminishes people's respect for that aspect of the community. Because if somebody can put their hand in the cookie jar and admit it, there could be somebody else who put their hand in the cookie jar who's not admitting it. So distrust then starts to creep in. So we're kind of all kind of in this together. If one if one can
Yeah.
go, we can all go, and then if one can rise, we can all rise. So.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It's it to me a challenge for a lot of us to use or find. Sometimes it's not using the right words, it's finding the right words to describe what it is that we're trying to get across to folks. Like the
Mm,
fact that we're
mm.
talking here with Eileen Forrestal. She's written a wonderful book that I hope you'll get a copy of. And it, of course, is entitled The Courage to Shine, Find Your Voice, and Discover the Healing Power of Your Words as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and we're here with Eileen Forrestal, all the way from Ireland. What part of Ireland are you in?
I'm in Sligo, which is in the northwest, which is on the
No.
coast, which is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
I've been on the West Coast, Galway, and actually
Hmm.
stayed in a bed and breakfast on the coast in Galway, in
Hmm.
Connemara, on Inish. I believe it was, they referred to it as the island of Inishni,
Hmm.
which was not too far up the bog road from Roundstone.
Mm.
Absolutely beautiful. And
Mm.
actually went out to the Aran Islands to Inishmore And
Mm.
I sat on the edge of that big granite slab. If you've ever been there or you're familiar,
Hmm.
to my
Yep.
wife's consternation, she's constantly asking me, "So where did you hide the insurance papers, the life
Oh.
insurance papers?" Um,
Yeah.
when we talk
That's
about,
that's the edge, definitely.
yes,
That's the
indeed,
edge of Europe. I mean, you are absolutely on the edge of Europe on that.
and I was
The
wanting to
fort.
take pictures
Yeah.
of what it looked like on the edge, and I got them.
Incredible.
And if I'd lost my shoes, they're gone. I'm not going after them. What an experience. Um, I know that Gaelic is the official language of Ireland. I've
Hmm.
studied a little about the Hebrew language, and I know that the letters in the language of the alphabet of Hebrew, each one of them has their own legend, similar to, for example, a map. You take a look at a map and you see all of the different symbols, and it tells you what those symbols mean. And of course, each letter has its own legend. It has a color and a number and a tone and so on and so forth. Even maybe a story behind that letter. And then you start putting those letters together into words, into sentences, into paragraphs, into chapters, and into a book. And it has an incredible depth to it. But the moment you translate it out of the Hebrew into something else, all of that's lost. First of all, I'm curious, is Gaelic in that fact, is Gaelic similar to that? Do each of the letters, and I can't remember how many letters there are in the Gaelic alphabet, but do they have a legend of sorts that you know of?
Not necessarily, but I mean, there's only 21 letters in the
21.
Gaelic alphabet. But again, it's exactly as you say, it's in the translation, something gets
Yeah.
lost. I used to love Irish when I was in school, and you'd read the stories in Irish and you'd just get into the Irish story and then you'd have to translate it into English. And it's like, but where did this, it's like, but where did all that lovely stuff go?
Yeah.
It's such a flowery, colorful, I don't know where the language is, but it's just definitely a different kind of language to the English language, which is more kind of Germanic and it comes from Eastern Europe. And we were more, I don't know whether we were in tune with the fairies and Tír na Og or whatever, but we have a definitely, and that was always a thing that you talked about politicians. My grandfather was a politician, and had I not had a stammer, I might have gone into politics. But anyway, here I am.
Hmm.
And but he was a passionate Gaeilgeoir, an Irish speaker, and was absolutely passionate about the Irish language and culture and music and dancing and writing and literature, and was in that whole world of it. So, kind of when the politics kind of upheaved in our country, that was the bit that really he couldn't. No, 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 we're not violent. We're not violent. We're cultural. It's all about our language and our music.
Yeah.
Uh, but that was, and he wrote in English and Irish, and he was very instrumental in having Irish be part of the language of the government when we had
Mm.
our new government here in 1922. So, yeah, definitely the Irish language, I think, loses something in its translation to English. But I'm not a fluent Irish speaker. I'm not a fluent Irish writer. I have so much here in the house that's written in Irish, and uh, I'm not sure what you call it. I can't think what I have to say it now. But when it's written, I can't read it. I can't read any of the letters. The language is the letters are just impossible for me to read. So
Yeah.
they're all shapes. They don't almost look like Arabic, but
Mm.
it's. But I do love when I can read what I can understand and think, oh, look at that. Yes, I remember all that lovely poetry.
Yeah. Well, there are two
Mhm.
words. That there's one phrase that my wife and I we end every conversation with, whether we're face to face or whether we're on the phone, and that is something we learned when we were in Ireland. Slán go fóill. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Goodbye
Slán go
until,
fóill.
or I'll see you later. You know.
Yeah, yeah, slán. It's actually safety for now. Slán go fóill, and it's three words. It's slán go fóill, so safety. So it's really about being, safe.
Hmm.
And then go fóill is like it's like a for now and kind of forever. It's like it's a lovely word.
Yeah. And then there's another one. It's wonderful when you greet someone, falche. I believe it's falcha, falche.
Fáilte,
Welcome.
yeah, welcome. Yeah, fáilte. Tá fáilte rót. It's like there's a welcome kind of being forwarded to you.
Hmm.
Being
Yeah.
yeah, definitely that's
And there
yeah.
was a course online, a Gittabet, which was a course in Gaelic. that I actually have. I burned to CDs that we listened to. We
Mm,
tried to learn Gaelic, and then at the Irish Cultural Center in Phoenix, we
mm,
attended. We went to take Gaelic classes in Gaelic, and it was a
mm,
lot of fun. It was more fun just being amongst all of the people trying to learn it than it was learning the language, because it was
oh,
quite a challenge. There's no question. And I have
mm,
to say that sitting in a pub with a pint of Guinness in Ireland, not here in the
mm,
States, but in Ireland,
mm,
whether it's Dublin or Lismore or Limerick or any of the towns in Galway for that matter, and just listening to the people talk, whether it's in Gaelic or English, there's just something for me, there's something about that. But when we get back to this whole subject of words,
mm,
it has been said that, especially with the English language, uh, which has thousands and thousands of words. However, it isn't how many words there are, let's say in the dictionary, it's how many words are in our vocabulary, as I brought up earlier, that we're actually choosing to use. My wife and I
mm.
even have a challenge sometimes communicating with each other because she's coming from a little different perspective than I am. It's neither right nor wrong, it's just different. And so I almost have to intuit some of the words, the descriptive words that she's using, so that I don't sit there going, I don't understand what you're saying. What is it that you want? Because
Mm,
that starts to grate on someone. After a while, what do you mean you don't understand me? I was pretty darn clear in what I said.
mm.
And so when so that's something, that a hurdle, if you will. And are there techniques? Are there steps? Are there things that you have learned that are in your book here, the courage to shine, that you offer to people to not only to be understood, but if necessary, to go back and then clarify what you just said so that you are heard?
Yeah, that's the challenge, is being heard. And I know it's about, finding your voice, and that your voice is your speaking voice, but sometimes it's listening to understand first rather than speaking to be understood. So when we can sometimes listen first and really think, are we understanding? And then when we really get we're understanding, then we can speak to that. Sometimes we're speaking into something that's like, they're just not listening, they're not getting it. And the more you speak and the more you say and the more you explain, it's still hitting this brick wall. So it's sometimes to listen first, let the brick wall come down, or let the wall come down brick by brick, because you're listening to stone by stone by stone by stone, word by word by word as
Mm-hmm.
they come down. And then you can kind of get to the bottom of that and think, okay, now I can hear what they're saying. And now you've got an opportunity to speak. But we kind of want it the other way around. But then there's always a we. Like if I'm
Yeah.
speaking to you, you're speaking to me, it's me is me, and then you're me. So, we're always the same. We're just mirrors of each other. So it's having that kind of willingness maybe to go first and not speak first.
Yeah.
And when you were clear what the other person is perhaps trying to say, then we can maybe think, well, and this is what also I'm trying to say. So,
Is the technique, I've heard, is this a good technique to use where you share something with me and then I respond by saying, I heard you say, and then you repeat in your words what the person said, or you attempt to repeat what the other person said in that regard. And then if they didn't get, if you weren't, if you didn't understand and you didn't get the message that they were trying to impart, they then say, no, what I'm saying is, and then they use different words, and you kind of go back and forth, and there's no anger, there's no agitate. It's because you're trying to understand one another. You have a sort of an unwritten agreement that you're not going to attack each other. You're because you want to understand where the other's coming from. Is that a
mm.
is as far as you're concerned? Is that a good technique?
Well, yeah, understanding people is really, really challenging. We can hardly understand ourselves. We're expected to understand somebody else. So often I don't really go there. Sometimes I literally just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody's speaking, and you just say, okay, that's interesting. Say more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they can say more, as opposed to trying to go back and repeat what they've said in a way that they're hoping you can understand, as opposed to just going on and saying more. So sometimes I often say, just say a bit more is kind of the most interesting thing you can actually say.
Mm.
Because eventually it'll get said, whatever it is people want to say. And sometimes when you go back and try and repeat it and try and have them say, but you said this, and they say, well, I didn't really mean that. And but you said, and about what I said, and then but you said, and it just gets down in the here, but it's like tennis, it's like ping pong. So that doesn't really go anywhere. So I often find that if I'm just kind of saying, well, okay, so just say a bit more about that.
Mm.
And say a bit more about that. And sometimes you get to hear a bit more.
So, and there is a bit of a sort of
And I'm
a,
not I'm not a specialist in anything in this
no,
area.
I no no
It's,
no, I understand that. I do.
it's
I
just
do.
what it's what I kind of the practices that I use at this stage. And I find it's easier just to listen, actually, rather than even trying to understand.
Mm. Eileen Forrestal is my guest. She has written a wonderful book that I hope you'll get a copy of. It is entitled, of course, The Courage to Shine. Find your voice and discover the healing power of your words as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and my guest, Eileen Forrestal. And when you come, because I know there are a lot of, I know it's more than just Europeans who visit England and Ireland, when they go on vacation and so forth. They're coming from all over the world. Do you find when you come across folks who are traveling and vacationing and so forth, if they speak other languages, is it a challenge sometimes to get the point across, to get a message across, even if they're just asking for directions to get somewhere? Do you have those opportunities to interact with folks from around the world there in Ireland?
Well, probably not hugely here now, the way where I live, but I certainly have traveled in all sorts of countries all around the world where
Hmm.
English was not spoken. So I'm the person who's trying to communicate and trying to find out and get directions. And you kind of feel that actually, if you really are looking for, directions or something, and you're asking like in the nicest possible way, when you're the person who's trying to find your way and trying to find what to do and you don't have the language. But, generally, if you look like you're curious about the other country and you look like you're lost or you look like you're looking for something to do, it's amazing that people will show up. And, even here, like, I mean, I love showing people around Ireland. I absolutely love it. And showing people around Sligo because it's like I know the places that I think they should meet. So if I think they look like they're interested and they're looking lost or they're looking whatever, I'll do my absolute level best to make sure that they get, well, to see all the kind of things that I think they should see, which is really what I want to see when I go away too.
Oh, absolutely. When we were there, and of course, the only other country that I've technically been to, well, actually, a couple of them actually, were on cruises around the United States, the Mexican Riviera, down the Mexican coast to three different ports, and then, of course, a Caribbean cruise. But that wasn't a big deal because most everybody in those countries spoke English. I took Spanish for a month, for a semester in high school. I remember a very little, muy poco. But it is something that we need to we need to address, I think, in terms of this aspect of not only shining as described in your book, but also in terms of understanding one another. I've often thought that if telepathy, if we could develop our telepathic abilities, then words wouldn't matter because we'd be sending images. You would see what I'm seeing, and then you would formulate in your own mind the words you wanted to use to describe it if you verbalized it, but you'd see it. It would be like that giant granite slab that I sat on there in Inishmore, uh, and so forth. You'd see that. I wouldn't have to describe it to you. You'd see it. and you would
Yeah.
know that I was putting myself in great danger. So it's one of those things where, if we begin this process, talk to us a little bit, if you would, about this process that you have written about in your book. What are some of the steps that you have incorporated to help us to get to that place where of understanding, not and I would have to actually add to this, not only others, but maybe even more importantly, understanding ourselves.
Well, that's a great point. Somebody did say, the most important book you ever read is the book you write yourself.
Mm.
And, you know, in writing the book, it's not so much that I have a process or that I, teach anything or say something. I just kind of go through my own experience and I try and share my own experience. So I have lots of stories as to how, life showed up for me and how I experienced life and then how maybe I experienced it differently or how I, saw it a different way than I had seen it before. So it's really coming going through kind of my own lens and then trusting that my lens is not that, alien, that perhaps there are other, people
Yeah.
like mortals, who probably had a similar experience. We've grown up in a particular time. I don't think my certain books can be read now as easily as they were read when they were written, 200 or 300 years ago. And then other books that are written today will have zero relevance even in a year's time because the world will have moved on. But I try and kind of keep it as personal and as universally personal as possible in my writing because I really only write about what I have experienced and what I know myself. I'm not
Hmm.
writing medical textbooks. And I don't really feel qualified to teach anybody about anything, but I can, articulate or I can write in a way that I think perhaps other people might see themselves in what I say, and maybe that supports other people.
Is this your first book?
It is, yes.
How'd that feel? Not only diving into it for the first time, going, I need to write about this, but then when the box arrived in the mail, because that's what happened with me, I published through Amazon, and I ordered a hardcover copy, and I opened it up, and I'm going, wow, this is pretty cool. I actually have written a book, and I'm
Mm.
published.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that. But now I have to admit, I had a, confession that, I published the book. And like you said earlier, this was published in 2021. And it's like, can I saw it? And it's almost like I just dropped it. It's like, I was nearly too, it's almost like I didn't actually have the courage to promote the book. And, Jack Canfield had read the manuscript and he actually did the foreword and he thought it was great and he gave me a great endorsement. And I kind of went, oh, it can't be that good. So I just dropped it. And, so it's almost like there's nearly like a shock of seeing it in writing. And for me, it was like, oh my God, like really? Really? So anyway, that's kind of why it's taken me a little bit longer to, and I wasn't even sure, I say on the front, like, find your voice and discover the healing power of your words. And I was thinking, oh my God, maybe my words have healing power. Did I really want to discover that? Like power in words and maybe what I say. So, it's like, what am I saying? And is it, are people getting value? Or, again, is there that just that uncertainty as to, do people understand what I'm saying? Do they
Yeah.
get it in the spirit in which it's intended? Or, so yeah, it's a little bit kind of vulnerable when you do write, especially when it's a memoir and you write about it and you write about your life and you kind of expose yourself to the world. And it's like, well, this is me. This is me. This is what I did. This is what I do. And so yeah, so the book, it's more than just like a book. It's like it's like
Yeah.
my book. It's like this is
Yeah, exactly.
mm,
Um, my favorite review, I haven't gotten a lot of reviews on my book, which was published just this past September 2024, was from my mother. Now, she was not able to post it. She says she's posted reviews for other books that she's read, and she apparently has some difficulties with Amazon. She and Amazon don't seem to get along when it comes to posting reviews. But her review, which was very kind, obviously, as being her son, She's congratulated me, and she did give a bit of a critique in terms of some suggestions. But the main part of the review was, I read your book and I learned things about you I'd always wanted to know. And I thought, I think I need to communicate with my mother a little more often. Have you gotten a reaction from family and friends in maybe a similar fashion? I didn't know that about you.
Um, a little bit,
Yeah.
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 But I think there's the sense of like some people just didn't even want to read it. I
Really?
don't want to know. I don't want to know that about you. Because some of the reviews, like some review came, it's like it's brutal in its honesty. Brilliant, but brutal in its honesty. So,
Hmm.
so not everybody was rushing to read it of my friends and family, put it that way. So the reviews have been from people that I don't know, and they've been like wonderful because there's no kind of what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because what I had to face up to was the fact that a lot of my early life was very much pretending. So people who were in my earlier life were kind of thinking, "You mean to say she didn't like apples?"
Yeah.
There's a kind of this sort of coming clean a little bit. So that I suppose in a way that's a challenge as well. And again, I did when I wrote the book, um, somebody they were suggesting there was something it was about fear. I do actually write it in the book, but it was about fear. And I had taught this girl how to swim. And I was saying, swimming, it's all about confidence. It's all about courage. Water's water. We're all the same. That's it. You just have to, it's confidence. You learn how to swim. And anyway, she learned how to swim and she was thanking me. And she said, "What are you afraid of, Eileen?" I said, "Not afraid of anything." And she said, "Oh, everybody's afraid of something. You must be afraid of something." And I'm thinking, well, I'm actually not. I can't think what I'm afraid of. Heights,
Mm.
spiders, everything. I can't think what I'm afraid of. And then, she just kind of looked at me and I said, and I kind of got this thing. I said, "Oh my God." I said, maybe, maybe I'm afraid of dying without ever having been known.
Wow.
And then she said, "Oh, that's easy. Write a book." And I thought, okay. Because I thought the only person who actually knew me was my mother. And my mother was dying. And I thought, well, who else knows me?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay. So then I went, so I can't, that was the thing for writing the book. Now, whether that was, vanity or arrogance or something, but it was like, I'm going to write about me now. I don't want other people writing about me and other people saying things about me that are not true.
Mm.
People say lots of things about other people and whether they're, true or not, and people believe other things. And I thought, no, do you know what? I'm going to have the last word here. This is it. Whether you like it or not, it's brutal in its honesty, but this is what it is.
But,
And and as I say, I learned a lot about myself
hmm
when I was writing it.
Well, it's interesting because in my growing up, of course, being legally blind, I was running around the neighborhood. I was bicycling. I could see well enough to do that. And we lived next door to a very large family. We were a large family of eight, six kids, and they had nine kids. So they had a house full, 11 people living in this house, and they actually built a two-story second floor onto it. They got the permits and everything. Anyway, I was communicating with one of the brothers not long ago, and he had passed on the fact that he and I were chatting to his elder brother, who is my age, and his elder brother texted back what I thought was a rather interesting comment, which I'll share a portion of it, and that was that he says that uh, um, growing up with him, I never had looked at people with a disability as being disabled. Anybody who had vision challenges like him, but would still play chess and football and build. I loved this. He said, build forts in oleander bushes and dig underground forts, which is what we did to my father's consternation in the backyard. um, Showed that having a disability is no reason to not do what you want to do. And we had never talked about it when we were growing up. It wasn't a subject. Do you feel that your book is going to help people, hopefully, to step out and show the world Yeah, I have. And now, bear in mind, I used to, until I started working, I didn't have this, but I do now. And I've had it for 40, 45, 50 years. This phrase, the legal blindness was a perceived limitation. It was only a limitation if I allowed it. Do you think your book is going to help others to recognize that they not only have always had a voice, but that despite or maybe because of their perceived limitation, they can speak out and they can be heard, such as you have done here?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's all perception. And how we perceive ourselves first is most important because that's what we put out then into the world, and then that's how others perceive us.
Mm,
So, yeah, I think it's really critical because I mean, growing up, nobody particularly knew that I had a stammer. I just spoke the way I spoke, right?
yeah.
But I thought it was awful. I thought it wasn't like everybody else. So I stopped and I hid it. But I did that. Nobody said, "Oh, stop speaking, Eileen. You shouldn't talk." You know, nobody said that. So everybody, any limits that I put on, any limits on my life, I put them on myself
Hmm.
because most people you can do what you can do. And we have huge capacities, we've got huge abilities. And then we tell ourselves, I can't do that. And then we'll say, well, I don't really want to do that anyway. Or, you can't make me do that. Or we get all these other ways of saying, because we're not willing to risk it. Because probably if we did it, we could probably manage anyway. We mightn't
Yeah.
manage the way somebody else manages, but we'll manage. And, because that's just the way we are. We're very creative and we generally go after what we want and we generally get it on some level.
Yeah.
So I think it is the perception. And if we can, be a little bit more, I suppose maybe it's not that it's truthful in our perception, but be willing to see ourselves the way others see us as well, who are more kind to us, people who love us, people who really want to kind of help us instead of pushing them away and being arguing against what they're saying and being more, no, no, I can't do it and you can't make me. And somebody else saying, of course you can do it. We'll help you, and then be willing to kind of step into that world and see what that would make available as opposed to sitting in our own.
Yeah.
Um, you
Eileen
know,
Forrestal is my guest. EileenForrestal.com is the website. That's EILEENFORRESTAL.com. And we hope you'll go there. The book is available, I'm sure, on Amazon. Is it in Audible form yet?
it is inaudible. It's self-narrated inaudible, would you believe?
Wonder Wonderful. I will look forward to getting the Audible version and listening to the wonderful lilt in your Irish voice.
Okay, just remember it's brutal in its honesty.
I no, hey, that's a good thing. I've even shared some rather brutal and honest things on this program over the
We
years.
have Yeah, we have to be honest, whether it's brutally honest or not, we're all people, and sometimes, you talk about, I used to say, some of my words would come out of my mouth like a machine gun, like da, 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 and the word would never come out, right? But it was like what we have almost like bullets, and then when they would come out, they could be really, really tough. I mean, I could hit home,
Yeah,
know, something, so what they are kind of lethal weapons as well. So I kind of say anything that we can that we can wound with, we can also, heal with. So that's so rather than using them to kind of wound and harm and hurt, if we can use them, use them to, enlighten somebody or encourage somebody or help somebody or all that, then
yeah.
it's a little bit more of a kind of
Well,
a,
we're gonna talk about that as well. Eileen Forrestal is my guest. The book, once again, the title is "The Courage to Shine: Find Your Voice and Discover the Healing Power of Your Words." As we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, I'm Richard Dugan, your host here on Tell Me Your Story with Eileen Forrestal, and I'm wanting to ask you in terms of there are those who speak without a filter. Some of them are rather prominent, and then there are some that are just in our lives. And we can't really tell them not to say those things because they have a right to speak their mind. But we, on the other hand, and taking our amendments to our Constitution, for example, the freedom of speech, I did a little research on that, by the way, and actually, the core of that was the freedom of speech had to do with, um, if you will, criticizing the government. All right. That's really what the First Amendment was designed to allow people to speak their mind about our government. It didn't mean, I think, I don't know if it was Supreme Court or otherwise, you cannot yell fire in a crowded movie house. Oh, but I have the First Amendment right of freedom of speech. No, there's a responsibility. But where I'm going with this is this. Do you ever nowadays utilize that filter, i.e., that still small voice or your intuition, to maybe find the right words to convey where you're coming from, as opposed to using a scattergun or a machine gun to just throw whatever words come out?
Oh, not always, it'd be great to think that I was like that. It'd be great to think that I was that kind of mature and grown up, but stuff comes out, we all kind of reactivate it and we get triggered and stuff comes out. But for me, I'm much better at going back and apologizing and saying, look, I probably spoke, off the cuff there, or I spoke without thinking, and, kind of, can we go back? So I would spend more time going back.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, less. Certainly less. I'm more aware, definitely now. I would have been very impulsive in, how I would have spoken, because once the words came out at all and they were flowing, I kept them going because I was lucky. I was like on a roll. But that's if I could get started. But so yeah, I think a little bit more responsible really in my speaking, and being aware of how it might be landing with another person, and whether, I just don't want to intentionally cause any upset. And then we can all cause unintentional upset. But I would have been aware where I would have intentionally wanted to provoke somebody. And it's like, I don't do that now. It's like, no, I'm not into being provocative.
Mhm.
Um, so I think there's ways and means, and I just found that listening is the easier way to do that. Listen first, and then see
Mhm.
what is needed here. What is my input? What are people wanting to hear? And if they don't want to hear it, well then, don't really want to have to say it.
Well, if we just do the basic biological math, we were given two ears and one mouth. That I think is more than an implication. I think it's pretty straightforward that we were designed to listen more than we are to speak. And I'm as guilty as anybody else of speaking more than listening. And
Mm.
I'm working on it. I'm 65, so I've still got another 35 years. I want to live to be 100. I would
Hmm.
love to live to be 100 in Ireland. So that's one of my dreams. It's one of my wife's and my dreams is to move there and live. We spent the equivalent of an entire month there over two
Mm-hmm.
separate vacations,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a wonderful place. I spoke with a gentleman who was on one of our programs. He was traveling. He was from Northern Ireland, and I was sharing that with him. I said, "Oh, I love the country. I love being in Ireland." He says, "Okay, I already know the answer to this question," he says, "but what is it that you love about Ireland?" And I said, "The people." We were in Dublin for the first time. We were traveling southward, heading towards County Waterford, and we were staying in our lane, and we were just traveling down the highway. And somebody came up from behind us and they honked a little bit and they kind of waved us off to the side. So we all pulled over and we felt comfortable. We didn't feel threatened. And they said, and this was, of course, back in 2002. And they asked if we were lost. And we said, well, not exactly. I mean, we have a map here and so on and so forth. Why? He says, well, because your indicator has been on for 3 miles. They were just telling us you need to turn that off because you're not changing lanes, you're not getting off the roadway. And we said, "Oh, okay. Hey, people do it here too." And but that was so nice. I mean, it wasn't road rage. It was people being kind and trying to help us traveling in a foreign country. to get around a little bit more. Because I would venture that doing that too much, the Gardaí would probably pull us over too, and we might get a ticket for
No, they'll be
improper
just as
use.
nice. They'll be just as nice. They'll just tell you your indicator comes.
But no, the people are, and the Gardaí are also wonderful as well.
Are they
Um,
great?
when you start to contemplate interviews such as this one, what goes through your mind? Do you ever wonder, or do you ever have to wonder if will I say the right thing? I mean, because I'm being interviewed about my book on occasion, and when it's over, I'm going, what the heck did I just say? You know, do you feel
No, I
like
don't.
you've said
No.
all of the right words, you've gotten your message across?
Well, like, who knows? Who knows? No, I come on. It's great to be invited. I have no idea what you're going to ask. I have no idea what you're going to say. But in a way, I'm quite unguarded. I'm unfiltered. And just what comes out is what comes to mind when you ask me a question. And so I'm totally kind of just relaxed. I'm here, and whatever conversation we're having, that's what we're having. And, you know, I don't know if it's perfect. I'm hoping that your listeners, are, engaged and enjoying and following the conversation, and they can understand my accent, and I'm not speaking too quickly, and that they're just getting some, entertainment or enjoyment or, insight or something from the interview.
It seems as though there's an awful lot to discovering one's voice. As we've talked about here on the program already, uh, did you find that the case as you were writing the book, that maybe the book just it sort of kept going because, oh no, I need it. There's also this part and this part and this part. And I guess part of this question has to do with how you discovered those additional elements that you would add to the book as you wrote it. Or did you already have it in the framework? You already knew exactly what you were going to write, and it just flowed out onto the paper or onto the computer.
Not necessarily. Like when I started writing the book, I actually started to speak into the phone because I had no idea how
Mhm.
to start a book. I had no idea where to start. And I remember picking up the phone and saying, okay, this is the start of my book. And I'm here. I was actually in Bali. I'm in Bali. I'm by the pool and I'm writing the book. And I hadn't even got a name of at the time. I had no name. I had no title. I had no idea what I was going to write. And then I just thought, well, it's to do with what is it that I want to say. So what did I want to say? Like, what was it? And then when I went back to, um, what did I want to be known for? Like, what did I want to even know myself for? And then it was like, well, what kind of life have I had? What have I done? What difference has anything made? Have I made any difference in the world? How did I get here? Like, how did I get here to this swimming pool on Ben Valley? To be even contemplating writing this book. And a lot of people had said to me, because I had got over my fear of stammering, got over my fear of speaking, got over my fear of anything, that I could, I should write about it. And I thought, oh, yeah, yeah, nobody really wants to know about that. But then I thought, well, maybe it would be of interest. So I had to write about what I knew about myself, but then turn it into a way of, would a reader get any value from this? Like, what is the point in just writing about me, me, me,
Hmm.
if somebody doesn't say, oh, I see me in this? And then if there's something that I could overcome, if there was some fear that I could overcome, and then come out there and just kind of be, kind of free in life and kind of happy in life, and a totally different experience in life that I had from like my first half, then, other people could. Like, life's short, and really, if we're not enjoying it, then really we need to look at why we're not enjoying it. And then what could we, what perception could we alter that would have it that we could enjoy life?
Mm.
And yeah, we're all entitled to shine while we're here. We're not here for a long time, and we're entitled to have our fair share of happiness and be able to smile and have a good laugh. And really, what's stopping us doing that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. When you use the word shine, obviously that's I would say that's probably self-explanatory. Have you ever had anybody ask you, what do you mean by the word shine? Does
I
everybody
haven't
seem to
had
get
any.
that?
They just seem to get it, I think.
Okay, good,
Yeah. I
good.
think maybe the subtitle probably brings it, down into a bit more specifics. Um, but I think people seem to get the courage to shine. I don't know why. It's maybe it's a word that's kind of around now, in the parlance of, 2020s, that we should be shining, shining
Mm.
your light and all that. And I don't know,
Yeah,
there's that lovely song, see this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. We've all grown up with that little song.
yeah, yeah, we have. England,
We've grown up with it.
Ireland, and the United States. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've grown up with
Absolutely.
it, and we look at it, we love it when people are kind of shiny, there's like shiny happy people. We get a bit, resentful of the shiny happy people, but they're there. They're there. And we like to see people kind of, as I say, shining in the art of living even. And
Yeah.
but we like to kind of do it ourselves. So, we can. It's doable.
You faced a lot of obstacles in your life as you've lived, and yet you also had some great triumphs and victories as well. What advice would you give to folks who are facing some of these challenges that are challenge? It's like you need to speak up. I can't understand you. Please tell me. Da 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 da. And whether it's a fear within, maybe it is a perceived limitation or a disability, what have you. Maybe it's a work environment or a family environment and so forth, where you can't seem to get a word in edgewise. I mean, you'd think that in a family of eight, in my case, that we wouldn't be able to get a word in edgewise, but our parents did instill in us a certain level of respect for one another, to allow everyone to have a voice. Um, so, what about that? What advice would you give?
Well, I am coming towards the end of my second book, would you believe? And it's called Embrace the Edge. Life is bigger when you say yes. So my advice, if for whatever, is, it's like, you're approaching an edge because, you feel kind of a bit, nauseated
Hmm.
or a bit like anxious, or you could feel this like tension, and there's an edge there, right? And it's like, well, what if you can embrace the edge? Like really, curiosity, willingness. Okay, let me just do it. Do the thing. Do the thing that you think you cannot do. Just go and do it. Go beyond that fear. Just do it. And then, as I say, life is bigger when you say yes. And then realize what you're saying yes to.
Hmm.
You're saying yes to, what's possibly beyond. Is there, if it is a kind of a challenging conversation to have. And it's like, oh, what if I got to the other side of this? What would that be like? Oh my God, if I could only get to the other side of it, if this wasn't the problem, if I was on the other side of it, what would it be like? And kind of get there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then just do the thing, get over that thing and it's probably going only to be a conversation. Very little else. Olympic athletes get over pole vaults and, people get over walls and they get over boundaries and borders of countries and everything. And really what we can't seem to get over is this kind of, expression, like just get past this conversation or get over this misunderstanding or get beyond this, this argument or whatever this thing is. And it's to see really just, embrace that edge, have it, just do the thing, do it.
Mm. Mm.
Just do it with a yes because you want the reward.
Yeah.
You want the reward.
There was a physicist who was asked the question. Neil deGrasse Tyson was asked, because you mentioned the Olympics. He says he was asked, if aliens were watching from above, what television program would you want them to see? And he didn't hesitate. He says the Olympics, because that is the one program every 2 to 4 years that shows people from all other countries and nationalities coming together to compete, but not just to compete, but to encourage one another, even if they're competing against each other. There is a level of sportsmanship and encouragement that they all want everybody to do well. Certainly, there's going to be a gold, a gold, a bronze, and a silver medalist. Granted, but at the same time, everybody wins from the standpoint if we treat each other with kindness and respect as we're doing our thing, it just makes the whole experience better. And I thought, wow. And it seems to me that's kind of what you're saying here, in that, we need to say, we need to speak our truth, right? I mean, that's the bottom line, that what you're talking about when you talk about the courage to shine, you need to learn how to speak your truth, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think most of our challenges are not actually physical. There are limitations. Like for
Mm-hmm.
you, your sight was, more limited. For me, my verbalizing and articulation was limited. But most of our challenges were, how did we deal with that?
Yeah.
The limitation is not the limitation itself. It's what we say about the limitation, which is, something that as I said, that most of them are not physical, because anything physical, I mean, I don't, if I really wanted to lift the car, I'm
Yeah.
sure I could find 10 people would help me lift the car. I cannot lift the car myself. That's a physical limitation.
Right.
But life is not asking us to do things like lift cars. So
Yeah.
life is not asking us to do things that are really very physically beyond our capacity to do that. But life is asking us to, think bigger, speak bigger, look at life from a different perspective, like go and move. We're not trees, as I say. Go and stand in another corner and look at, the room from a different angle. Go and stand in your thing and look at your life from a different angle. Listen to somebody else. How would they look at your circumstance if they were in your shoes? Like, we can really move around. And a huge amount of it is getting beyond these kind of barriers of our own thinking and get out into some other thinking that might help our thinking to be a bit more more productive. I don't know what that's whether that, I don't know whether that translates, but
It,
anyway, that's our thinking is everything.
yeah, it definitely translates. We're talking with Eileen Forrestal. The book, once again, is The Courage to Shine, Find Your Voice, and Discover the Healing Power of Your Words, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and Eileen, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the program and sharing your story, your memoir, The Courage to Shine, but also from, again, a personal standpoint, coming to us all the way from that beautiful island, Ireland, and we're hoping to get back there at the end of 2025 to stay for, well, heck, I'd like to make it
Let me
permanent,
know
but
when you're coming.
I will. I will, absolutely. Or I'll be shouting from the cockpit, "Hey, we're coming! We're coming!"
Mhm.
And looking forward to that. But I really do appreciate the time you've given us. This has been wonderful, and I thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for the invitation. It was lovely.
I do have three final questions I ask all of my guests as we wrap up this edition of Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. And we are giving you folks choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. The first of the questions that I ask all of my guests is, in your case, who is Eileen Forrestal?
She's a work in progress. She's a work in progress. Yeah.
Okay. What gets you up in the morning?
Used to be my dog, but she died.
Oh,
Um, so I used to have to get up very early to feed her and let her out.
mm,
So what gets me up in the morning? Oh, just the thought of, what's today going to bring, basically. And
mm.
if I have a schedule, which isn't quite flexible, I'm retired now, you see. And it is just, yeah, it's kind of curiosity really gets me up in the morning.
And finally, what was your best day?
My best day ever. My best day ever. Gosh, my best day ever. What's coming to mind? What's coming to mind is you talked about travel, right?
Mhm.
And one day I'm not going to say I found myself because I did actually have to do some walking, but I walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked, and I was walking up the Alps, and I found myself like in the middle of kind of an alpine, I don't know, wonderland or wilderness, whatever you want to call it, and like all by myself, like in the entire world.
Mm.
My experience was of absolute and total freedom. I will never forget that day.
Mm. Wow.
And I was on the way up. My friends were working in a kind of a hostelry or whatever, kind of at the top of the Alps, where the trekkers would be. And I
Right.
had been to the village in the town, and I had wanted to go and visit. And they said, "Oh yeah, walk." So I took them at their word. It took me 8 hours to walk. But that was, I think, one of the most amazing days of my life. I did
Mm.
something like that was completely bizarre. I went off by myself. I don't know whether I was thought I could be, I don't know if the Yeti was going to eat me or whatever, but there was like nothing. There was nothing there. There was nothing to be afraid of. It was an absolutely beautiful sunny day. And I sang The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music.
Oh,
So that was one of my best days.
wonderful. Wow, wow. I can visualize all of that and would love to have experienced that myself. Again, thank you so much for the time you've given us, and we do look forward to actually seeing you one day in person, and hope that's sooner rather than later. And again, thanks for being with us.
Okay, and thank you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. As I said, we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.